Oh my gosh, we're back at Disneyland. It is one of those blistering hot days where you can feel the pavement through your feet. But luckily there's plenty of ice cream and refreshments here, and you can still feel the magic shining through as well. I was hoping to get a little hot popcorn today, but I think it might be a little too hot right now. And I've got to get away from Main Street at the moment before I get sucked into filming all the Halloween decorations that are starting to pop up. I swear it feels like it starts earlier and earlier every year. I'm still trying to celebrate the last days of summer out here. But luckily, there's one land that never seems to change with the seasons. Spring, summer, fall, winter, Christmas, Halloween, it's all the same in the world of fantasy. I've been craving a little Fantasyland ever since the last time I was here. Of course, I probably should have picked a less hot day. But of course, for a little while there, we thought that the Magic Keys, the sort of annual pass at Disneyland, was going to run out and not be renewed. So I made a reservation for today, and if there's one thing you never do, it's turn down a chance to go to Disneyland when you can. And so I'm back once again with no plan or agenda except to wander through Walt Disney's original Magic Kingdom and soak in as much of this summer magic as I can. I guess I really shouldn't have said that Fantasyland is completely unchanging. It may not get redecorated with the seasons every year, but it's actually changed an awful lot. In fact, if we were to step outside of the castle and completely exit the Fantasyland of today and come back 50 years ago, we'd be walking into an almost entirely different Fantasyland altogether. As you can see, Fantasyland of 1970 was a lot more colorful. And it was also a lot more crowded. When you entered the Fantasyland of the past, the carousel used to be a lot closer. Basically right here where these buildings pinched together, squeezed right between Peter Pan and the original Snow White's Scary Adventures. And as if that wasn't enough, you'll notice that squeezed between Peter Pan and Mr. Toad, there was actually a Mad Hatter shop right there. There was so much crammed in here. And standing out here today, it's almost unthinkable that they could have had a whole shop right here between these two rides, jutting out into the walkway. So you would have had the carousel wedged between these two rides here, a shop jutting out into the walkway. And where the carousel now stands were the original Mad Tea Party's spinning teacups. Look how brightly colored that floor is. And of course, by the late 60s, early 70s, they had that crazy, like, wrought iron decoration all the way around them. Not everything in Fantasyland would be unfamiliar to a traveler from the past today, though. Take a close look at this pan across the front of Fantasyland today. And then if we look back into the past, although Peter Pan looks very different, that front part of Fantasyland looks almost identical to the way it used to. It's looked this way ever since Disneyland opened. It's one part of the land they got right the first time, I guess. And if you look closely here today, the former knife shop is now the Merlin's Marvelous Miscellany, themed back to Merlin from The Sword in the Stone. Architecturally the same, but thematically very different from the heraldry and knife and sword shop of my time. But the Merlin theming is not actually new, because if we stand over here and jump back 50 years again, you'll notice it's hard to read, but that sign says Merlin's Magic Shop. And it was sort of a companion to the magic shop out on Main Street. They sold magic tricks. They also sold old Randotti skulls and Randotti wizard statues. Those are pretty cool. I'm trying to get a hold of one for a while. But even though the Merlin theming may be back, there's sadly not a Randotti product to be seen. Now past the Mad Hatter and the souvenir shops and the carousel was something really big indeed. Something that I briefly mentioned the last time we were here, the Chicken of the Sea pirate ship. Basically a giant real-life replica of Captain Hook's pirate ship used to stand back here in Fantasyland, right where the modern Dumbo ride is today. And I touched on this in the very last episode, so don't worry, you're not getting deja vu. It's just that after I brought up the pirate ship last time, a lot of people left me comments and questions because I mentioned that it was in fact the Chicken of the Sea tuna pirate ship with a full-on restaurant inside that served tuna products. Specifically, in these old photos we've borrowed from Daveland, you can see they sold a tuna clipper salad, a tuna dietetic salad. I don't even know what that is. At first I thought it said diabetic salad and I was like, what? A shrimp cocktail, a tuna boat salad, a tuna pie pastry shell, a tuna burger, tuna sandwich, and a fruit tart with whipped cream. Now I've shown a lot of this before in our previous time travel documentaries and then and now episodes about Fantasyland. But the reason I'm bringing it up again is because after the last episode, so many people told me about their fond memories of going inside that pirate ship and eating that tuna. And now that I'm out here on this hot summer day, I've got to tell you, the last thing in the world that sounds appetizing to me is hot tuna. Tuna burger, tuna sandwich, or even the tuna pastry shell. Ugh. In fact, forget tuna altogether. Don't forget the other stuff on the menu. Shrimp cocktail when it's 100 degrees. I'll pass. The other thing I didn't really mention, but as I was digging through old footage, I found a lot of it, is that between the 1950s, when the pirate ship was back here alone and sort of just a little puddle out here, not really decorated, and the 1970s, the surroundings of the Chicken of the Sea pirate ship got a major upgrade in the form of Skull Rock. Look at that. That is epic right there. For fans of Peter Pan, it was pretty exciting to come back here and see Peter or Captain Hook or the crocodile. Often you could see my favorite pirate, Mr. Smee, out here with amazing rock work, luscious waterfalls that must have been nice to look at on a summer day. And of course, lots of little nooks and crannies where you could sit in the shade, an upgraded pond. And there was a little path or trail where you could get around the front or the back of the pirate ship, roughly back here behind Dumbo, where the back of the Dumbo line is today. And that was all an expanded pirate-themed seating area for everybody eating that tuna. Out here in the summer heat, there was a treasure chest out here. From time to time, there was a live parrot outside. This was quite a busy Peter Pan-themed area of the park, because it wasn't just the pirate ship, of course. Let's not forget about the ride, Peter Pan's Flight, that's been here since 1955. And across the way, where the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique just reopened, this facade here was once the entrance to the Tinkerbell Toy Shop, which is why to this day you'll still see carvings of Captain Hook, Mr. Smee, and even that pesky crocodile out here. My mom always remembers this as her favorite toy shop in Disneyland. And if you're thinking, wow, back then, Fantasyland was a little bit Peter Pan heavy, don't forget that when Disneyland opened, the movie was only 2 years old. It came out in 1953 and was still popping up occasionally in second and third run theaters across the United States, so this was a little bit of vertical integration. Like I always say, Disney has been promoting their new projects with their theme parks since the beginning. Anyway, the reason the teacups and Dumbo got pushed out of their original position and replaced by the carousel, the Chicken of the Sea pirate ship, and Skull Rock went the way of the dodo, and Fantasyland in general looks completely different than the way it did back in the 50s and 60s, is because by the 1970s, so many little clone Storybook Land style parks had popped up all over the United States and were now aging, that the old Fantasyland look had become completely dated and didn't really stand out from the competition anymore. It was time for a major upgrade, and so in 1982, the vast majority of Fantasyland was demolished, and on this side of it, literally demolished all the way up to the castle, and everything was rearranged both to provide more space and much more believable, over-the-top immersive scenery. And even some of the rides, like Snow White over here, were completely rebuilt, and you may have noticed the old ride vehicles held half as many guests as the new ones do today. I was just noticing in that old clip taken roughly right in this area in front of Snow White, which came right up on the old carousel, that you could see Alice and the Mad Hatter wandering around quite a bit. They've been wandering around quite a bit today as well, although the Mad Hatter has clearly had some sort of facelift. And speaking of characters, Fun Pig and Peter Pan, I was actually hoping to find Captain Hook out here today. It's been a little while since I've seen him, and of course, he is a little bit intimidating, but if he tried any of his hookish tricks on me, I came prepared with this old Happy Meal toy. It's not a real pocket knife, but I think it would have scared away old Hook, because look at this. Oh yeah! That would keep the old codfish in line. It even has a little shovel on it for digging up buried treasure. Too bad there's no more treasure out here where Skull Rock used to be, huh? By the way, I don't think that kid's supposed to be right there. Now, of course, at the tail end of Fantasyland, the Mad Hatter still exists. It's a little more themed to represent the White Rabbit's house now, of course. And there's pictures of his relatives on the walls. He's all set up for a little tea party in here. And I love that you can check out his bedroom up there, and that there's still a little magic hidden away in this shop. Ooh. Actually, if you come outside the back door from the way we went in, you'll see the White Rabbit's house is depicted here as it is in the film. And look at that little doorway. A lot of people miss this detail. Now, back in the day, neither the Mad Hatter or the Tea Party were located in this area. Where the new Fantasyland Mad Hatter's been standing since 1983 was a big circus tent-looking restaurant area that in the 1970s was serving up some Robin Hood-themed food. Wow, look at the size of that wiener there. Almost certainly not gluten-free back then. And that seating area you just saw was located over here where the teacups now spin around and do their thing. I actually just noticed that the ground between the teacups is still painted in that same stripe pattern that it used to be back in the 60s and even the 50s. It's just a totally different color scheme, much more muted, doesn't stand out as much. As you see, I get pretty obsessed with Disneyland history. In fact, There are actually times where I get so obsessed looking at old footage and old pictures of the original Disneyland that I forget when I come to the present day park that the teacups aren't over here behind the carousel. It was definitely a very different look back here in the old-timey Fantasyland, that's for sure, especially now that the Skyway to Tomorrowland, the sky buckets, are gone. You used to be able to see them from everywhere, and you used to be able to see everything from them, too. As they cruised over Fantasyland and through the Matterhorn over to Tomorrowland. It was only very recently that the station in Fantasyland for the sky buckets was demolished the last 5 or 6 years. And I just realized it's been a long time since I've looked at where that station used to be. Look at this, from this view today, you don't see much of anything really, but years ago, you would have seen the Swiss chalet station for the sky buckets. Actually, you'll even notice that the little Casey Jr. train station is not in this photo anymore. That's because it used to be the old ticket booth. And you'll notice that even the walkways and the planters are all different here. Everything's rearranged. All as a result of building that new 1983 Fantasyland. Of course, one of the only things that did survive were the sky buckets, which were located right up on this hill. In fact, those friendly cast members are standing right in front of what used to be the path to get up there. Actually, technically, I believe that was the exit stairway. The entrance is a little more cleverly hidden behind this weird tent thing right here. Look at that. Look at those old concrete shaped like wooden log stairs that used to lead up the hill, into the chalet, to the sky buckets, and all the way to Tomorrowland. Last D23, I was sitting in one of those sky buckets with its designer, Bob Gurr. And it wasn't until I got in it and closed the door and had a wave of panic that I finally realized that the sky buckets are pretty much 100% responsible for my fear of heights and vertigo and all that stuff. Well, the sky buckets and the old rockets in Tomorrowland, which are a subject for another day. Gosh, look at this place. It is gorgeous, and I feel so lucky to be here. Even though I'm a paying customer, I try to never forget that I'm a guest here, like all the rest of us. And although I grew up literally across the street, and my grandparents lived across the street since 1957, and I've had an annual pass for years, I try never to feel entitled. I always try to feel that sense of wonder and happiness coming here. It's just literally the key to truly enjoying this magic kingdom, you know? So I'm sorry if you heard me say it before, but attitude is really important here. Can't emphasize that enough. Wow, the costumes sure have changed at Storybook Land since the 1970s, but not much else has changed here. The same wonderful small buildings inside, that same sense of enchantment as Casey Jr. comes winging around the bend or Monstro starts blowing steam up in the air. Not like old Alice in Wonderland over here. This has changed quite a bit, although I must say, it's at least still pretty darn recognizable. Holy cow, at the size of that tree, though, huh? Would you look at the size of that growth? When you think of Fantasyland dark rides, Alice in Wonderland is almost always the one that gets left out, the one people forget. But it, too, like Peter Pan, Mr. Toad, and Snow White, has been here since the early days. And all things considered, even though it's been refurbished and gussied up a little bit over the years, it's remained relatively intact. It's still pretty much the same ride that it was 50, 60, 70 years ago. Well, almost 70. We're getting pretty close. And almost the same. The one major changes in the outside portion upstairs up there. The whole pathway that the caterpillars go on is now much wider to the right and to the left of the ride vehicle than it used to be. As you can see from this old image from the sky buckets, it used to be quite a perilous drop on either side of your ride vehicle. But modern safety standards have once again had their way, and there's been some slight changes to this ride. To be honest with you, I don't think I've ever noticed that huge tree before, but it is weird looking at how huge it is today, and then looking back in the past about 50 years ago and noticing there's no tree there at all. Must have been a much hotter wait in that line. Speaking of waiting in that line, it's been a long time since I've ridden Alice in Wonderland. I might just take a little journey. But while I hop into this long, long line, I won't leave you hanging. I was hoping to see Alice and the Mad Hatter again over in this area. I mean, it would only be fitting, right? Unfortunately, all I've seen is Mary Poppins roaming around in this area. But if we're gonna get all random about the characters anyways, might as well jump back to the Fantasyland of the past and show ya this. I was just looking back and noticing how much wider this walkway was in the 1970s. Before, of course, today, when they moved the teacups over here and you got all these planters and trees in the way, that walkway leading back to It's a Small World was a lot wider. And look at that colorful building back there. Up until this morning, I had no idea what that thing was. It's sitting right where the old Midget Autopia used to be, which was the official name of an old attraction, a very small version of Autopia for the smallest kids. Two of them could sit side by side. In fact, they actually had two little steering wheels so that brother and sister, or sister and brother didn't have to fight over the car. That whole thing is a video for another time, but basically where that ride was taken out is where that little colorful building appears by the 1970s like that. And until I went looking at Dave DeCaro's website, Daveland, I had no idea that was a caricature shop. You could get a little drawing of yourself there, and according to historian Ken Stack, later it sold photo supplies. And you know what I'm just noticing today? There's a little kiosk right about in the same exact spot. Of course, it's a little bit different. They got all the lights here for parades and the giant parade speakers hidden away up there. And of course it all blends in much better with the small world architecture of the area. What do they sell over here? I don't think I've ever even noticed this. Ah, they have frozen lemonade and mango lime slush and chips. Suddenly I'm very hungry. Mickey! Look at that, it's Mickey Mouse up there. So that's where he's been hiding all day. Anyway, in case you were ever wondering, yes, this is in fact where the smallest of the Autopias once was. And I'd love to talk to you about that and Small World and the old ticket booths and things that are missing from Fantasyland, but I'm trying to turn over a new leaf and keep these videos a little bit shorter if I can. So I guess I can't talk about this gate again today. But you know, my friends, that is fine, because all this time I've somehow been in line. Don't think about it too hard or you'll be filled with malice. Instead, let's climb aboard with Alice. All right, I'll stop now. All right, here we go. I'll be able to show you what it looks like up there now. We go down, down, down.
The white rabbit. Wow. See for yourself.
Oh, see, that's all new. Look at that animation in there. And then the more old school stuff. Hey! There's just nothing like a classic dark ride, dude. All of those little characters, even with the new animation inside, it only adds to it. I'm glad it was never totally gutted and just done with screens, you know, like a modern ride. The compromises they made in here are totally perfect. It's such a good mix of new and old. Oh, the Queen's card soldiers are all stuck. All right, here we go. Her Royal Majesty, the Queen of Hearts, and the King. Where is he?
Okay.
There he is. Oh, I need my head. All right, here we go. Look at this. As we emerge outside, you can see here, there is a lot of concrete on either side of that path. You used to be able to look straight down at the ground, roughly between where these leaves are painted here. It was a lot more treacherous looking. By the way, look at this up here. Look on top of the mushroom. Caterpillar shoes, but no caterpillar. It was a long, long line down there, my friends. I almost never stand in long lines, but it was worth it because at the end of this ride, we get cake!
Oh, my beautiful cake.
Seriously, what was up with that mushroom? I've never noticed that before. Must have been a caterpillar up there at some point that somebody knocked out of most of his shoes. Anyway, there's a bunch of stuff out here that I would love to show you guys. I'd love to stay all night. And of course, I'm not nearly done with all the Disneyland history that I want to share with you guys, not even just in Fantasyland. We've still got Matterhorns and monorails and motorboats to talk about. Not to mention the missing Autopias. For being so small, Fantasyland has a lot of history packed into it. And speaking of Fantasyland history, I know most of you missed it, but I am just freshly back from an epic road trip all the way across the country. I was filming the whole time. And on that trip, I visited the remains of a whole theme park called Fantasyland, which was located, of all the places in the world, in Gettysburg, pretty much right on the battlefield. So check that out when this is over. There'll be a link at the end, and there's a whole playlist called Road Trip USA for that epic road trip on this channel. And don't forget, there are more than 1,000 old episodes on this channel for you to enjoy, many of which include Disneyland history and time travel. We did some of the earliest shows at Disneyland, Disney World, Disneyland Paris, and we've got tons of travel stuff from all over the country, Route 66. Anyway, that's my sales pitch. If you're interested, you guys can go back and check it all out. For now, though, I'm nearly done. Just a quick ride on Pinocchio, and then I'll show you guys something cool at home. Now this was the one new dark ride they built in 1983 for the new Fantasyland. Although it fits in so well with the classics, you'd have thought it would have been here since 1955. Off we go, back into the world of Pinocchio! Good old Stromboli.
Making lots of money.
Making himself lots of money. All right, now look at that. Look at that sign right there. That's what I want to show you later on at the house. Remember that sign? Oh, Pleasure Island is so loud. I love Pleasure Island so much. It's so crazy in here. There's so much going on all the time. Now look at this. Tobacco Road. Tobacco Road. Here comes the only hologram in a ride at the park that I know of. Look at Lambert's face. Did you see it? That was a hologram. Old school. Ah! Ouch! That hurt. Ah! Mama! Oh, that's so sad. No. All right. Okay. Almost to the end. Oh! Back safely to Pinocchio's village and Geppetto's toy shop. Here it is inside the ride. There it is outside the ride. Little blue fairy action. Let's see, Figaro, Cleo, Geppetto, Pinocchio, and Jiminy Cricket. And that's all she wrote, folks. I had to plus my video, just like they plussed Fantasyland by giving you a little bonus ride on Pinocchio. Even though really, I probably should have taken off a while ago. Time to get going. I still don't know why they can't retheme that back to Geppetto's toy shop. It still has its original theming in Disneyland Paris. Oh well, maybe one day. All right, my friends, you know I love this place more than pretty much any other. I've got to be getting home. There's another adventure I've got to get ready for, plus some cool stuff I want to show you at home and some announcements to make.
That sure was another fun adventure, huh, Wilbur? I don't know about that, Ed. Oh, didn't you have fun being at Disneyland all day? We're at Disneyland all day, every day. Oh, yeah.
So let's M-scray now. Time to get out while the getting is good, my friends. Do me a favor, though. Let me know in the comments here or on Instagram what your favorite Disneyland land is. Helps me get a feel for what land you'd like us to uncover the history of next time. Welcome back to the garage, aka the Leroy E. Schmaltz Memorial Workshop, named after my recently departed friend Leroy Schmaltz, the tiki carver, the guy that carved all those tikis at the entrance to Adventureland, both here and at the Magic Kingdom, places like that. And even though I've been crazy busy lately, I have managed to work on a few things, although clearly, as you can see, I haven't had much time for shop cleanup since Midsummer Scream and all the other events that we've been doing. And we're going to have another one coming up very soon in October. I'll post about that on Instagram. But anyways, you remember those signs that I pointed out as I was going through that signpost in Pinocchio with Pleasure Island on one side and the Pinocchio Village sign on the other side? Well, for years I have wanted to recreate the signs on that signpost. I kind of wanted to recreate the whole signpost itself, but then I realized that I'm probably going to stick these on eBay rather than put them in my antique store booth. So with a little carving, a little chiseling, a little sanding, I finally created those signs that for a long time now I've been telling myself I'm going to recreate those signs, you know, from the ride, but in actual 3D, not just looking 3D, but painted, you know. And anyways, I just wanted to show you guys that because I've been working on these. Yeah, it'd probably be pretty hard to put these on a signpost and then ship it somewhere, so I guess I'll put these two up separately. I just wanted to show them off because I got excited after I made them, and that rarely happens to me, so sweet. Speaking of Midsummer Scream, I still have the castle walls. I've got to load them up on a trailer tomorrow and drive them to Las Vegas. I'm going to be in my friend Tom Devlin's next movie, I think. He has agreed to store the castle walls for us for a year until the next Midsummer Scream, which is pretty darn cool. Now, coming up right after I get back from that, Allie is due for another surgery. It is theoretically, hopefully, knock on a wooden sign, her last big major surgery. So that's going to go down next week. I'm sure I'll let you guys know what happens, some kind of update, and hopefully everything will be cool. It should be less complicated and a shorter recovery time than last time, but it still means a couple of days in the hospital for us, and then we'll pretty much be like thrown right into the Halloween season. There's lots of frightening things to film and lots of crazy stuff going down for Halloween, but it's been one heck of a year and it's not over yet. I just wanted to bring you into the shop and thank you guys for joining me today for all the crazy adventures, and more are on the way. And that's really it. For everyone that pre-ordered a Randomland Halloween mask, they are going into production and they should start shipping in early September. Personally, I can't wait to get mine so I can scare the living daylights out of my son. But I think that brings us up to date. I think that's all the announcements and things that I had. Thank you guys for joining me on the adventure today. We've all done our duty. Time to go home and sleep well. Oh, look at that, see? Crow time. All the crows come from miles around to go back to sleep at Disneyland. That's how you know the sun is going down. Oh no. Oh no, no, oh no, oh no. We've got a hat down. We've got a hatless person out there. And even worse than that, we've got a personless hat. Hey, Mickey. Hey, Donald. Go enjoy yourself. You've done your duty. You can go home and sleep well.
Yar, be me, the chicken of the sea, calling from aboard.